A shortage in staff has caused a massive backlog with passports in the U.S. Coming up, how that's affecting international students at Texas A&M. Plus, critical race theory has become a controversial topic over the last several weeks. We'll hear from a professor who currently teaches the curriculum.
Those rain chances are going to be dwindling quickly. The week ahead, very hot and very dry. I'll let you know just how hot coming up in my forecast. Your KRHD News starts right now.
Connecting the Brazos Valley, this is KRHD News.
Good evening and thank you for joining us for KRHD News at 6. I'm Hallie Jones. Tonight we take one final in-depth look at critical race theory from a college professor who teaches it. KRHD News investigator Dennis Turner finds out the answers some have to this controversial curriculum.
When we look at American history, we view it through our own personal lens. This lens colors our view of the world. Shiley Casey knows it. She also knows some people try to keep us divided so they can keep their influence.
Well, some people hold on to the race thing because they hold on to power.
How history is talked about depends on who the victor is.
Deborah Ortega, a professor of so-called critical race theory, doesn't want us to remove that lens, but rather to just realize it's there.
It really is the jumping off place for people to start to begin to have critical thinking skills. And how it does that is it starts to ask us to look deeper into the things that we are told, what we say, what we read, and to start to question those things to decide, does that match what our truth is today? Is there a different truth, or is there a misfit between truths?
This theory about our truths started to gain steam in the 1950s when the Supreme Court ruled segregation in schools unconstitutional in the landmark case of Brown versus the Board of Education of Topeka, Kansas. When integration began, but equality still lagged, a black civil rights activist and lawyer at the time, Derek Bell, looked at what was happening and asked the question, is this coincidence or is this structural? A question still being asked and debated in classrooms today. Because as Joe Welter of the Community Race Relations Coalition says, we keep ourselves apart.
If you narrow your world and you don't have close friends of other colors and cultures, you can really believe that race is not an issue.
Something the critical race theory, say experts, reminds us.
It does take a race perspective with the intention of sort of uncovering the places where we're missing that connection, that understanding of other people who don't make up the majority of our social context.
Since February, 6 states have banned teaching of critical race theory in public schools. 17 others introduced legislation to do the same. 9 states have worked to expand education on racism and bias by revising their state standard.
What I'm seeing is, the authorities wanting to dictate exactly what you can say and what you can't say instead of presenting theories and ideas and leaving room for an open discussion.
Those that don't care for critical race say it doesn't give America a fair shot.
The part about America, in my opinion, we did begin with the idea that all men are created equal. Now, that was not properly applied from the beginning, but we have struggled and struggled to bring about that end result, that all men are created equal.
I would challenge anyone to actually read what critical race theory is about and talk about how that actually creates hate. I think what it does is it reveals the way that there are holes in our policies, in our practices, in our laws, which allow hate to thrive, actually.
To her, that means George Floyd, Michael Brown Jr., Asian American and Pacific Islander hate, inner city violence, inequities in education and healthcare, and trying to overcome divisions and inequalities in our country so the lens future generations see is history through a lens of inclusion.
I'm very proud to be a U.S. citizen, as were my parents. But when you think you've already achieved number one, you sometimes forget to think about how do you continue to be better and better and better.
And Shiley Casey knows the only way we grow and get better is if we do it together. We are America's only hope, she says.
hoping that our country will get back to the mindset of democracy that we always.
Dennis Turner, 25 News.
Thanks, Dennis. Meanwhile, critical race theory isn't the only bill causing controversy throughout the state. The Texas Senate recently passed a bill that limits the teaching of certain topics. This includes the removal of referencing the KKK as morally wrong. Now, the topics can still be discussed, but teachers would not be required to discuss them. As Democratic House members are still in D.C. to prevent quorum, the bill's future remains in limbo. And as those House Democrats remain in D.C., Beto O'Rourke's group is raising $600,000 to keep pay for their stay. The funds could last up to another 2 weeks as lawmakers attempt to stop the controversial elections bill from passing. The money is being used to help offset costs for hotels, food, and transportation. With a shortage of employees, passport agencies are struggling to meet the demand for Texans who want them. KRHD reporter Rebecca Fiedler spoke with some international students at Texas A&M about how that might affect them.
If you've tried to renew your passport lately, you've probably noticed that the process takes a lot longer due to the pandemic. Well, the situation's even more stressful for Texas A&M's international student population as they try to obtain or renew their student visas.
I was really worried last year when I planned to go Bangladesh because all of a sudden my younger sister passed away, so I needed to go back. But that time what happened is all the flight canceled, and even there are lots of uncertainty if I can come back here because the rules changed due to the pandemic.
Whether it's booking a flight or renewing a passport or student visa, Texas A&M's international students like Kamrul Hassan of Bangladesh have struggled both to leave the country and to stay in it.
One of my friends, his wife came here as in spouse visa, but she got admitted here. After coming here, she got admitted at A&M. So she need to change her visa status. So for that, she need to go to US Embassy in my country. So, but due to this pandemic situation, they decided not to go back. But there is the opportunity that you go to Mexico, you go to another country, and you can use the embassy over there. So they are going to Mexico to change their visa status.
The Texas A&M International Student Services Office has been working hard to help their students obtain visas and to renew passports in a time where delays last as long as 3 months.
Many of the U.S. embassies are still operating under emergency protocol because of COVID-19. So the number of visas being issued is, for the past few months, has been much lower than it has been in the past.
Texas A&M hosts as many as 6,000 international students each semester under normal circumstances. Now, a number of those students may not be able to attend classes in Aggieland in person. And for those here whose passports or visas aren't renewed, they can face a number of worries, such as access to a Texas driver's license.
It does create anxiety for the students, but it's not it's one of these things where as long as they're working with us on getting their paperwork renewed or they're in the process of keeping the U.S. government informed, that the government works with them as much as they can.
And to combat those anxieties?
What I find helpful was Texas A&M counseling service. They really helped to go through this pandemic and frustrating situations.
Reporting in College Station, Rebecca Fiedler, KRHD News.
Research from the Ad Council says 1 in 3 adults are not yet vaccinated against COVID-19 in the United States. 20% say they want to learn more about it first, and now the group is trying to help with that.
So that's why the Ad Council and the COVID Collaborative are trying to, again, educate those. What are the facts? And it's very important to educate ourselves as to the current state of the pandemic, as well as what are the effective means of combating that pandemic.
Now, this is especially important as misinformation on the vaccine continues to circulate and the Delta variant continues to spread. It now accounts for 83% of all cases in the United States. Health officials have also been reporting more cases of the Lambda variant. A hospital in Houston saw its first case this week. Meanwhile, a Florida hospital is turning away elective surgeries again due to an uptick in unvaccinated COVID patients.
A large proportion of the population is unvaccinated, and we have a highly contagious variant. When those two are brought together, obviously that leads to a worsening point, a surge, for example, in cases, in particular in otherwise young and healthy individuals currently.
The Ad Council and COVID Collaborative are offering resources. They can be found at getvaccineanswers.org. Those include vaccine information for yourself or a child. The site will also give you safety facts, what to expect after getting vaccinated, and the differences between the vaccines. A recent study from the Commonwealth Fund estimates that the COVID vaccine has saved nearly 280,000 American lives and prevented more than 1 million hospitalizations. The number of U.S. jobless applicants reached its highest in 2 months at 419,000 claims. This story tops the newsfeed that economists say that companies have posted the highest number of available jobs in 2 decades. They can't find enough workers at the wages that they're willing to pay. China says it will not accept the World Health Organization's plan to continue studying the origins of COVID-19. The vice minister of the National Health Commission says he was taken aback by the plan for a second study. He dismissed the theory that the virus leaked from a Chinese lab, calling it a rumor that counters common sense and science. The director of the Olympic opening ceremony has been fired over a past joke he made about the Holocaust. The Tokyo Olympics Committee fired him just a day before the ceremony after a video clip of his joke as a comedian resurfaced from 1998. Japan's foreign minister said that the joke, past or present, goes against the value of unity that the games strive for. But we could finally start seeing some relief from the big increase in new and used car prices. We'll talk about how some car makers say the chip shortage is easing.
Texas was recently named the #1 state in the country to start a new business, and as KRHD reporter Rachel Espaillat shows us, that had an impact on some local businesses.
Wallet Hub says it ranked each state using 3 key dimensions: business environment, access to resources, and business costs. Wallet Hub also compared all 50 states across 28 key indicators of startup success. This helped researchers determine which state creates the best foundation to. And while Wallet Hub names Texas #1 in the country, locals argue Aggieland should be #1 in the state.
Because if you think about it, we graduate every year a whole new crop of entrepreneurs that are looking to start a business or go to work for a business and learn the business.
19-year-old Maddie Stott, who launched the second location of Texas Size Selfie about 3 months ago, agrees.
Coming into a new town and starting a new business, I thought that I would be like an outsider, and that is absolutely not what I was greeted with. I was greeted with open arms and curiosity. Even the people who didn't understand what I was doing, they were willing to ask and to learn what I was doing and become supportive of that. And so I think that
in Brazos County, Rachel Espaillat, KRHD News.
Claims for unemployment benefits unexpectedly rose last week. 419,000 Americans filed jobless claims. That's 50,000 more than the previous week. Economists worry the recovery process is slowing because of the quickly spreading coronavirus Delta variant. Meanwhile, the number of starter homes on the market has hit a 50-year low. Loan company Freddie Mac says only 65,000 new starter homes were built in 2020. Data from the National Association of Home Builders shows that part of it may be that single-family homes are getting significantly bigger. Many are no longer considered an affordable entry-level house. To Florida now, where the victims of the Surfside condo collapse will receive a minimum of $150 million in compensation. A judge in Florida says the sum includes $50 million from insurance, as well as $100 million from the proceeds of the property sale. Victims' compensation will likely grow with several lawsuits still pending after the collapse. Now let's turn to First Alert meteorologist Caleb Chevalier.
Yeah, it's only going to be getting hotter from here, Hallie. Tomorrow, just very few showers in the area. I know we had a couple today, but those are going to be getting less and less over the next couple of days. And by the end of this 10-day forecast, there's very little rain in sight. The weekend, it's, of course, going to be getting in that hotter trend, mid-90s to upper 90s. Now, the upper 90s might be limited to central Texas. Here in the Brazos Valley, we're probably talking more about 94 to 95, maybe 96 degrees for your Saturday and Sunday. But either way, the heat index during the afternoon, or in other words, how it actually feels, well, that's going to be feeling above 100 degrees. So very hot no matter how you slice it. These temperatures tonight not cooling down too much, at least for most of us. 76 in Bryan College Station, although Hearn, you could be at 72 with Madisonville at 74 degrees. Highs tomorrow are going to be in the low 90s. 93 for Bryan College Station, 91 in Rockdale and Franklin, and Brenham, you'll be at 93 degrees for a high temperature tomorrow. But again, it's going to feel closer to 100 degrees because that humidity is still around. So tonight, it'll be mostly clear. Towards this evening, can't rule out a few showers trying to wander into, say, Burleson County. But other than that, I think we're going to be okay. Could be a very spotty shower in the area for tomorrow. In fact, this is illustrating a handful of showers in the area for 4 p.m., which is probably overdoing it. I think it's going to be very, very minimal in terms of any rainfall that we see in the area or anywhere close to the Brazos Valley tomorrow for that matter. Saturday, of course, is when things really begin to dry out. High pressure begins to build in quite strongly, and so we've got very little cloud cover, and certainly those instances of rain, they are completely wiped out. So Saturday, it's going to be quite hot and dry, and there is more where that came from. So 95 degrees on Saturday, and we get up to 96 on Sunday, and there is at least one instance of 97 down the road. There it is on Tuesday. Keep in mind, look at this, those 0 rain chances all the way from the 7 through 10-day forecast, so mostly sunny to partly cloudy, very hot. Just remember to practice those heat safety precautions. I know it's been a little while. Those afternoons are going to start feeling like upwards of 100.
Unilever is warning consumers that it will have to start raising prices on products. So we're talking about things like Dove soap, Hellmann's mayonnaise, Ben & Jerry's ice cream, and more, all going to be getting expensive. Now, they say it is to counter the cost of inflation that the company's been taking on for ingredients, packaging, and transportation. And things are starting to look up when it comes to car sales. Prices on both used and new cars have gone up dramatically, partly because of the chip shortage. And now one company says relief is on the way. Taiwan Semiconductor makes up a large part of the chip production market, and it says production for the units that go in cars will go up 60% this year compared to last year. Experts say it is hard to tell exactly when we'll start seeing that affect car prices and supply.
One of the many factors, other than the chip shortage, is that rental fleets are down, so they're looking to boost their fleets back up again. And we have to consider that used cars are lasting longer. They're staying on the road longer and in people's possession longer.
The good news is that prices have already started improving. Price increases are slowing down and the shortage of cars is less severe. Experts at Carfax say it looks like that trend will continue, but if you need a car now, you probably won't see a dramatic price drop.
There really isn't a best time or a bad time to buy. If you need a car, you want to make sure you're getting a good deal and paying the right price for it. And that's really, especially on a used car, that's really where your research comes in and making sure you're getting the most accurate price for a vehicle.
One car maker that does continue to have problems with the chip shortage is Daimler. It owns Mercedes-Benz and Smart Cars, and it started prioritizing the production of its more expensive models. But now it sees that it can't even keep up with making that group of cars and briefly stopped production yesterday. BMW has also had to cut down on production, and Ford says it may start shipping cars without chips to dealerships, but they cannot be sold. Dealers would need to install the chips whenever they become available. The Justice Department is launching gun trafficking strike forces in cities where gun violence has been spiking. The department now focusing on Chicago, New York, Los Angeles, San Francisco, and Washington, D.C. It's stepping up enforcement in so-called supply areas. These are cities and states where it is easier to get guns that are later trafficked into other cities that have more restrictive gun laws. Now, the strike forces also plan for intelligence sharing and prosecutions between cities. The federal government is giving communities more money from this year's COVID-19 relief bill. The U.S. Secretary of Commerce announced today that $3 billion in economic development grants will be available. The grants are targeted at job training programs, developing new industries, and supporting local infrastructure. Recipients will be picked based on the anticipated return on investment to taxpayers. The pandemic has left many family members and loved ones to grieve alone. Alexa Liaco shows us the group helping young people find the support that they need.
When you think about the past year and a half,
first positive case of coronavirus.
There's been so much change and so much progress.
A COVID-19 vaccination program launches.
Now, COVID-19 restrictions are fading.
We are on a quick timeline to returning to life as we once knew it.
But for many, that day will never come.
This one right here is Luis and me.
Matt Emery lost his fiancée Louise to COVID-19 in January.
There is in fact normal for me.
The couple had plans to get married this summer, surrounded by their 6 nephews and family. But instead, Matt said goodbye to his love of 8 years.
He's the one that is the fighter. You know, his life has not been easy. And he's always fought through. And he said he was going to beat it, and I believed him, and I know he fought as hard as he could.
The loss left him empty and unsure.
To me, there isn't closure. The door's always going to be open. There's always going to be the relationship and the memories.
That's why he reached out to the COVID Grief Network. It's joining young people from across the country and the world into small groups to talk about losing a loved one to COVID-19 and the unique, often lonely process of healing.
People so often feel like in their day-to-day lives, other folks who are not experiencing a COVID loss simply just don't understand how painful it's been.
Matt met Jade Waddy in his small group. Jade lost her grandfather to COVID-19 this year, too.
My grandfather was my superhero.
But with their shared pain comes fond memories, too.
This is kind heart. That's what it comes down to.
He was an advocate for voting and voting rights, church, or just your faith, having faith in something, family.
The group, a vital support structure they couldn't find anywhere else.
It was easier to open up to this group and to be able to tell them, you know, hey, this is what I'm feeling. I feel horrible right now. I didn't sleep all night. I've had these dreams. I'm reliving the days leading up to Louis passing away. You know, and they all are in similar situations.
We're not getting back to normal, but we're going to rise above the challenges we face.
And they hope as the rest of the country tries to leave COVID-19 behind, they pause to remember the people who can't do that.
You know, Luis's legacy and the memory of him and all of our life together is not shrinking and then I'll be at peace and fine. It's more of just kind of how it's always going to be there. It's going to be the same size, but how do you live with it? I'm not going to get better. Nothing gets better, but how do I live with it?
I'm Alexa Liaco reporting.
All right, Alexa, thank you. And scammers are getting more sophisticated. They're now combining emails, phone calls, and text messages to try to get your personal information, how they could use your social media page to pull off their scam, and what you should be doing to keep your information safe. The Entree Act, just introduced in Congress, wants to help restaurants with $60 billion in relief. This is according to data from the Small Business Association. More than 177,000 restaurants that applied for pandemic help never got it. Nearly 3,000 of those are minority-owned. Many awards were rescinded due to lawsuits that ordered the SBA to stop honoring a priority period for marginalized groups. The new legislation would be on a first-come, first-served basis, meaning applications still pending would be reviewed first. Now, service with a smile and tipping is leading to sexual harassment. This tops the newsfeed. Research out of Notre Dame found these 2 common practices in restaurants have resulted in 66% of employees reporting some form of sexual harassment in the past 6 months. Restaurants trying to return to normal have been short on staff. Chipotle says raising wages and promising a path to promotion are helping. The chain CEO says after recently increasing pay by $2 to an average of $15 an hour, they're caught up on hiring. Freight railroads are struggling to bring workers back. It is contributing to a slowdown in moving chemicals, fertilizer, and other products. Shippers and trade groups say that worker shortages threaten to disrupt factory operations and hinder a rebound from this pandemic. And the largest wildfire in the country right now could give us some lessons about how to manage these in the future. We'll talk about what firefighters are finding that could change how we prepare.
After a long 5 years, the Olympic opening ceremonies are set to take place in less than 8 hours in Tokyo, Japan. And among the 600 athletes competing for Team USA are some of our favorite former Aggies. I had the chance to sit down with heptathlete Annie Coons as she prepares to compete in the historic Summer Games, that is Olympics 2021.
Set.
On June 27th, former Aggie Annie Coons punched her ticket to Tokyo with an incredible performance in the heptathlon at the Olympic trials.
And when I saw my name at first and then 67:03, I was like, what? And that's just like when I was just like completely overtaken by emotion and all of years of struggles, just like all the emotion just hit me at once. Because it all made it worth it, and it was just something I'll never forget.
Annie was a dual athlete for the Aggies, a forward on the historic Final Four Lady Aggie soccer team, as well as a member of the track and field team.
Annie is a great success story for our program, and especially for Annie. For her to stay in the sport as she's been able to do, she's in our Olympic training facility in San Diego, and for the marked improvement that she has made, it took years, but she stayed with it, and she's the United States champion. You can't ever take that away from Annie.
For the last 5 years, Annie has dedicated all of her time and energy into perfecting one of the hardest track and field events and not only make the Olympic team, but win the Olympic trials.
She just needed more time, and that kind of proves out that she was a young athlete, and a lot of young athletes, 4 years isn't enough time. It just isn't. And she's been able to keep going in the sport, and she's benefited as a result.
I always felt like I was kind of playing catch up, and I was really hitting my stride right before shutdowns, because I was coming off the 2019 season where I made it to World Championships. And then I won indoor nationals like in February, and then we got shut down in like March. So I had a lot of momentum that I didn't want to lose when COVID happened.
And as part of keeping her momentum was manifestation. For months, Annie wrote this list of goals down every day in her journal. And last month, she lived out those manifestations, exceeding most of them.
And I remember I even sat with my coach in September. It was really sweet because I like hugged him after the meet, and he was like, I remember you sat in my office in September. You told me I want to win the Olympic trials. And he even was like, it's going to be really hard, and it's going to be like a lot of hard work, but I think you can do it. And like, here's how we get there.
And now that she is there at the Olympic Games, Annie is focused on executing just like she did a month ago at the Olympic trials.
I think there's pressure if you allow there to be pressure on you. For me, it's more just an exciting, like, motivator where I'm like, okay, I can do this. I don't have to do anything different. Like, I can go in, and if I just execute the way I did at the trials, I'm going to score big.
And there it is. Boom.
And as Annie and 9 other former Texas A&M track and field athletes will be competing in the coming days in Tokyo, Coach Pat Henry has some final words for his former athletes.
Use everything that you've learned all these years. Try to put that effort together at one time. That's the challenge. If you can do that, you're going to be successful.
Annie will be competing in the heptathlon on August 4th and 5th in Tokyo. There is a total of 25 Aggies on the Olympic schedule, representing over a dozen nations. Now let's take a look around the world of sports with WTAW's Zach Taylor.
Here's your 25 sports update with WTAW Zach Taylor.
Hey KRHD viewers, single game tickets for the 2021 Texas A&M football season went on sale earlier today. Fans can go to 12man.com to purchase. Big 12 athletic directors and presidents met this afternoon to discuss recent reports that Texas and Oklahoma are looking to bolt to the Southeastern Conference. The Longhorns and Sooners have been two of the most high-profile members of the Big 12 since its inception back in 1996. SEC Media Days wrapped up today in Hoover with coaches and players from Missouri, Arkansas, and Auburn taking the stage. After seeing last night's game canceled, the Brazos Valley Bombers and San Antonio Flying Chanclas meet up again this evening. First pitch is at 7:05 at Edible Field. Meanwhile, in the big leagues, the Texas Rangers dropped their 9th straight this afternoon, falling to the Detroit Tigers 7-5. And NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell has sent out a memo to all 32 teams saying that COVID-19 outbreaks among unvaccinated players this upcoming season could result in forfeitures and no pay for either team that particular week. And that's been your sports update. From the WTAW Sports Studio, I'm Zach Taylor.
Extreme heat and dry conditions continue to fuel wildfires across the West. Officials say this is a fire season unlike any they've seen before. More than 70 large fires are burning across 13 states, and the largest is the Bootleg Fire in southern Oregon. It is now more than 394,000 acres. But there is some initial evidence that the forest treatment work that groups have been doing in that area may be working to make this fire less intense. This could offer lessons about how to make sure that forests are resilient in the future with climate change.
That work really looks like a combination of careful and thoughtful thinning of the smaller trees in those forests, opening it back up, leaving the largest, most fire-tolerant trees, and then critically reintroducing fire through prescribed fire or controlled burning, so that we're essentially mimicking that historical, cultural, and natural role of fire in these systems.
The Nature Conservancy has been doing the work that he just described for more than a decade in the Sican Marsh Preserve, where the Bootleg Fire has spread. He says that the fire is intense because of the ongoing drought in the area, but they are hearing some promising news from firefighters.
This fire burned across untreated areas and then into the work that we and our partners on the Forest Service and the work in partnership with the Climate Tribes have been doing, is that fire actually reduced in severity. It went from a crown fire burning through the canopies of the trees and returned to something more like that surface fire or the ground fire.
He says that ground fires are less severe and safer for firefighters. The Nature Conservancy is doing similar fire restoration efforts across the West, and they plan to get better data on the Bootleg Fire when it's safe. Now, attempts to steal personal or company information through emails, phone calls, and text messages are nothing new, but attackers are getting more sophisticated and combining these methods to make them seem more legit.
So think about the scenario of a two-factor message attempt sent to your mobile phone. Then you receive a phishing call or a vishing call on your phone, and then they ask you, we just sent you a code. Can you please let us know what that is so that we can move forward with this conversation?
Mark Ostrowski with Checkpoint Security says that you really need to be aware of these multi-factor scam scenarios. Checkpoint documented an increase specifically in phishing attempts late last year. The FBI warned it again this year, especially with remote work and criminals getting to gain access to private organizations. Now, as for who criminals are targeting, there are some high-value victims, but it is usually just based on the information that is available.
The organizations and the scammers who are trying to pull this off will actually go through your social media profiles and find information, create fake social media accounts to make you feel like that maybe perhaps you're a recruiter or someone who works for a company that's associated with you, to make it more likely, as well as a lot of these organizations actually will post information for help on the dark web and use the dark web as a way to actually recruit people to actually do these campaigns, perhaps in the same language as where the attack is going to take place.
So it's really about how much information you have publicly on social media accounts and how much information is available through past security breaches that have been sold on the dark web. And that's why password changes are so important. Now, while cell companies do offer spam control features, they aren't always 100%. You could still see fake caller IDs that say IRS or Social Security.
Because what ends up happening is that the attackers or these organizations who are looking to gain this information are able to leverage, voice over IP networks where phone numbers are constantly changing, and they can avoid that list to be able to still get calls to come through.
Now, if you do fall for any sort of scam, if you're working from home, it's best to contact your IT help desk so they can help change some company credentials. And if it's a personal multi-factor authentication scam, it is best to use that one-time code as soon as possible to log into the account that it's associated with and freeze it. Also, contact the institution or bank that it's associated with and let them know what happened. Now, a place that has been around since the early 1900s is working to bring a site important to Black history back to life.
Folks were dancing. It sounded like a Mardi Gras in there. It kind of tells you there was some fun in here.
We will take you inside the spot where greats like Duke Ellington and Billie Holiday would come to rehearse, and we'll take a look at some of the plans for it now.
Caleb Chevalier is standing by.
Thank you, Hallie. I think we've almost forgotten what summer is really supposed to feel like here in Texas, so we're going to see a lot of that over the next few days. We're definitely getting back into that pattern. 76 degrees will be your low tonight in many places. You go a little north of Bryan College Station, and you could find yourself a little cooler, maybe 72 to 73 degrees, but it will be hot tomorrow, 93 for many of us, with a couple exceptions like Franklin and Madisonville, but it's going to feel close to 100 degrees during the afternoon because that humidity is still high, and it's going to stay that way over the next few days. And keep in mind the actual temperatures, well, those are only going to get hotter, so you can bet the afternoons are going to start feeling a little bit hotter over the next week or so. So the winds out of the southwest today, a little breezy. They're going to be around tomorrow at about 5 to 10, maybe 12 miles per hour. Saturday also continues some of those breezes, which isn't bad. We could use a little breeze as long as things are super hot, right around 10 miles per hour. So just mostly clear tonight. Cannot rule out a very spotty shower or two tomorrow. I don't think there's going to be very many in the area at all. But once high pressure really takes over on Saturday, that's going to be when we start to see very little cloud cover for one, and then certainly the rain chances are going to be completely gone, and that heat begins to build over the next week. So 95 on Saturday, 96 on Sunday, and there are 97s and 98s down the road. Well, maybe not so much 98 for the Brazos Valley, but certainly 97 cannot be ruled out. But keep in mind, that's only the temperature. How it's going to feel in the afternoons, it'll feel upwards of 100 degrees.
As airlines try to rebound, American and Southwest are gaining profits despite being hardest hit by cancellations and delays last month. With the help of government assistance and vacation travelers, Southwest reported a $348 million profit during the quarter. American Airlines gained $19 million. Eric Clapton says that he will not play at venues that require COVID vaccines. In May, the famed musician said that he experienced a severe reaction to the AstraZeneca vaccine and was afraid that he would never play again. Clapton says that his decision was also inspired by Van Morrison, who's another musician who turned into an anti-vaccine activist.
I'm Chris Conti here in New Orleans, home of Mardi Gras Creole and this year's Scripps Spelling Bee national champion.
What do you hope other kids maybe take away from this whole thing?
That they can do it and that it's possible to be done, and that they probably need to study a lot to win.
Coming up tomorrow, we go one-on-one with her on the court and talk about her plans for the future and what life has been like since winning the national title.
Looking forward to that one, Chris. Thank you. And still to come today, the recent change that allows college athletes to get paid for endorsements is opening up a new world for athletes. How NCAA players are cashing in so far. Tell the whole story. That's the goal, as $3 million is awarded by the National Trust to sites vital to Black history. Forrest Sanders heads to a place that has been around since the early 1900s. It's now looking to bring back a very special room whose lessons have been absent until now.
Around here, tradition starts with pie. The story goes, in the old days of the Hotel Metropolitan in Paducah, Kentucky, there'd be a slice of pie for the man playing guitar on the porch, a slice of pie waiting for the guests in the rooms upstairs.
Food had a real part in the hotel, and food is the way most Black people express their love.
Betty Dobson, who runs the place today, says there's something you should know about who was being served those slices of pie.
Oh, you wanted that pie story.
The man on the porch, that was B.B. King. The guests in the rooms upstairs, that was any number of musicians so famous, their faces are on murals across the country. They were acts like Ike and Tina Turner, Chuck Berry, unmistakable voices.
Take it away, Luther.
Like Mom's Mabley.
Hey, honey, make me look like Lena Horne if you possibly can up there, Mr. Lightfair. That's better, baby.
Cab Calloway, Duke Ellington, Ella Fitzgerald, Ray Charles, Billie Holiday. It still excites me because those famous souls were here.
But Betty will tell you, the place that's key to the Hotel Metropolitan story is an unassuming little building around the back.
The Purple Room.
Before their gigs in Paducah, this is the space where the acts would rehearse.
A lot of history here.
Meaning this little neighborhood had free admission front porch seats to hear the greats.
Made it.
Folks were dancing. It sounded like a Mardi Gras in there. It kind of tells you there was some fun in here. If your suit needed pressing, I could take care of you here at the hotel.
But Betty says the presser, the barber station at the hotel were things born out of necessity. In the 1940 edition of the Green Book, an on-the-road guide for black travelers to find safe places, there are only 2 hotels listed for Paducah. Betty shares it was in the years of Jim Crow laws. The Purple Room had to be here as a rehearsal space.
The venues were white. It was kind of intolerable to have you there in the daytime if you were a black entertainer. Once they got here, being owned mainly by women, I could see that compassion. Come on in, baby. I know it's been hard, but you done made it here. Go on upstairs and lay down, get you some rest, and we'll make a plan tomorrow.
And Betty says something has just come along to help her tell the story of the people who stayed in these rooms. The National Trust has just awarded $3 million to 40 different sites important to black history, including the Caremu House in Cleveland, Ohio, the Prince Hall Masonic Lodge in Atlanta, Georgia, the Sarah Rector Mansion in Kansas City, Missouri, and an unassuming little building around the back of the Hotel Metropolitan. Betty wants to use the funds to restore the Purple Room, to make it a gathering space again.
If I'm here or not, the dream is to make the Hotel Metropolitan story whole.
For Betty, it's all a matter of keeping up tradition. In Paducah, Kentucky, I'm Boris Sanders.
Thanks for joining us for Krhd News at 6. Be sure to tune in to our next broadcast at 10. Until then, have a great evening.